Amena Bakr, head of Middle East energy and OPEC Plus research for KPLER. Amina, do you think they'll be popping what they call Saudi champagne in Riyadh this morning? This announcement, not only have they delivered their third accelerated quota increase, but they've delivered an accelerated supply increase plus, and the market has essentially not fallen, which would be a natural sort of course of things. Your thoughts on OPEC Plus's reaction, or the 8 countries we're talking about that are involved in these supply increases? They'd be pretty happy this morning, I think.
There were a lot of warnings, Sean, that if they do announce a really big increment, that we would see a big sell-off in the price. But the reaction, as you see, is very muted. And as Omar said, we're no longer just looking at the fundamentals here when it comes to price. Trading happens because of other factors and sentiment being involved in the financial markets and so on. So it's not just about that announcements around supply or demand. But saying that, there are still concerns. There are lots of concerns around the trade wars and the announcements that perhaps would be made this week. And I think that's putting a little bit of a bearish sentiment, which we're seeing in a number of analysts' reports from major banks and others, saying that this is still a risk here. Just one clarification on the OPEC announcement. This is not an increase in supply, so to speak. This is an increase in the production ceiling. So we are not seeing these volumes actually come into the market. Those 411, that 548 that we heard of over the weekend, that is not actual barrels, actual volumes that's going to hit the market. That's just an increase to the ceiling. And you are going to reach a point where a lot of these countries are going to hit their maximum capacity here. And we're going to start talking about spare capacity again and the lack of it. And as
So
we saw very
just if we
clearly.
take that point, I mean, if it's the quota increase, the production ceiling increase of 548, and it was last month, or the month we're in is they're doing 411. How much of that, and how much will it be in August, do you think, actual new barrels?
Well, the previous, for May, for example, that 411, we saw maybe 50% of that actual production coming in. We might see 300,000, but it all, for a country like Russia, for example, for Algeria, they're reaching the point where it doesn't make sense for they don't have the barrels to produce. So we are going to reach that point where we're not going to have that capacity, and we're going to start talking about spare capacity again. And I'm sure there are going to be all the doubts again around how much spare capacity does the group have at a time where I don't think this conflict in the Middle East is entirely over. It's not the end of it.
You mentioned there, obviously the structural side of OPEC plus. Some countries don't, these quotas are fictional. They can't raise to meet new quotas that are even going higher next month with the remainder of the 2.2. Never mind all of the other capacities out there. My question ultimately, where is the cohesion in the group when you have so much fiction, smoke, and mirrors around the numbers?
No, I still think that there is high level of cohesion, Sean. Given that these decisions are happening also so smoothly, that last meeting was just 10 minutes, right? So that just shows you that everybody was aligned, and it shows you that they'd had the conversation prior to the actual former meeting of rubber stamping the agreement. So unlike last time when we heard that Russia and Oman had proposed a pause, this time everyone was kind of aligned that they would go ahead with this bigger than expected increase in the production ceilings. And just looking forward from here, I think what the group is trying to do is just reset this whole baseline issue again, where you have, first of all, you need to get rid of the voluntary cuts. And second, you need to start looking at all the baselines. And this is what they're looking at. They're going to, again, engage with companies that would assess capacities of all the OPEC plus states and then set new baselines. And all of this is is going to be effective in 2027. It's going to take them some time. But what we are seeing, what we're in the process of, is this reset. And for this to happen, you need to get rid of the voluntary cuts and get rid of the fact that we have 8 members here that are kind of, involved in these cuts. And then you have the other group members, which is part of the wider group. So getting rid of the voluntary cuts is part of that reset process.
Cuts on cuts with cuts and more cuts. My question to you is, as the head of Kepler, OPEC at Kepler, and one of the secondary sources for OPEC, what numbers do you put on the page when you're putting your reports into OPEC Plus?
For the secondary source assessments,
Yeah.
well, we have our own supply and demand forecast, which is based on. I mean, we track all the shipments. That's one of Kepler's greatest strength. We see everything that's being exported. So we do our calculations based on that. We have our own methodology, and we only. I mean, this production is only crude and not condensate. So we have like a kind of breakdown: crude and then crude and condensate. So that's how we come. We put our numbers together based on our strength here, which is tracking exports.
Amena, Bakr, busy week for you as always. Every week's busy, you say, but OPEC Plus meeting this week. The OPEC International Seminar. I presume some plus people will be there, but ultimately it's a every 2 year event. But most notably, it's the first time, and I can't remember, and you can remind us when the group last met in person. So just the fact that they're meeting in person is quite unique these days. Your thoughts and expectations from this meeting? It's obviously coming now after these multiple announcements and increases. What's the expectation for OPEC Plus? A nice gathering, some nice glasses of wine. Is there any news value here, do you think?
I don't know about the wine, but yeah, it's a nice
The wine's never
gathering.
good. It always gives me a headache.
It's a gathering for sure. I mean, this isn't a meeting, as you said, Sean. I mean, the seminar takes place every 2 years. It's happening on the 9th and the 10th. I hope that you're joining as well. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
everyone will be there from the IOCs, from the industry, just in general. So it's a good chance to network, catch up. There isn't any formal or informal meeting happening. Perhaps we'll see bilaterals between ministers, discussions, informal discussions around projects, and also a chance for them to meet with many of the IOC CEOs that are going. So talks
What do you
about,
think all your former colleagues on the front line of gathering the news, all our former colleagues as former coal-faced journalists, will be asking? What's that question they'll be poking in the microphones in their faces in the corridors?
well,
What's the
I'm
one
sure, I
question they
mean,
want
everybody
answers
wants
for?
to find out if the group is going to be returning the remaining volume of 548,000. I mean, is that going to happen in one shot? Is it going to happen in divided by two? Are there concerns around the slowdown of the economy, a slide in prices? What price? I mean, the famous question is always like, what is the red line? Would you be okay with $50 oil? So I'm sure those are some of the questions.